I wanted to make a video in regards to a lot of Mac users speaking on colors not coming out right when they're going to print. Um, One of the first things you're going to do is with that printer, you're going to go to the Epson website and make sure you download the drivers. If you're not aware of what the drivers are, the drivers actually on Macs, they're universal printing, which means you don't need the driver, but the driver gives you access to things that the generic Apple driver is not going to give you access to in your printer, or it's going to give you too many access to things that you don't need. So, one of the main things that you're going to do is actually, like I said, start off at um, the Epson website with it and bring in your drivers. Sorry about that. Bringing this over. So we're going to go to epson.com, and one of the fastest ways to do it from this standpoint is actually just typing in F570 and then clicking on support. Not really sure what's wrong with my internet suddenly. F570. And then with these, it really doesn't matter. On a Mac, it's both the same driver. But the Edge Pro software works on a PC. It's like a RIP. But for you Mac users, you do not necessarily need this. A lot of what that RIP does, in fact, all of what that RIP does, you can do it in Photoshop. Um, I do have a PC that I bought to try this on just so I can see how it is. Plus, I have another RIP I need it for. But anyways, we're going to go to support, and it usually detects what you are in. For me, I'm on Mac OS beta. So this just goes to show you these printers do work in beta. So even if you update it to like Big Sur, prior to that, like any other earlier Mac OS, you can still use this. It detected mine as 10.15 because technically that's what that is for Apple. For me, I do not do these drivers and utilities combos at all. I don't do any of that. And the reason being I don't like all of the extra stuff that it checks for and the updates that it runs and all of that. So I just download the driver, and once I download it, it'll show up in the download folder. I double click it and let it run. Then once I do, I come through, I'll add the printer. So from here, I would add the printer because it'll show up on my network. That's the SC500. And one of the main things I see people miss when they add this is this little step right here. Normally, it's going to say because you haven't actually connected it to the driver. In my case, I have connected it to the driver. So it normally defaults to like auto select, which will throw that printer. If you have it on Wi-Fi, it will put it in AirPrint. You do not want it in AirPrint because a lot of the features are not AirPrint enabled on the printer. So you want to hit select software, and because you downloaded the driver, it's gonna show here. So you want to do this and select that SC500 and hit OK. And then once you hit OK, you're gonna come back here and hit add. That's what makes the printer shows up here. And here's one of the neat things that doing it this way and doing it correctly, right here next to kind, it shows the printer is actually installed to this computer. Go to options, and these are some of the things that you'll be missing if that printer goes on AirPrint. Like it automatically gets the printer information when the printer is on. Um, the default media settings, I have it set to use printer settings because sometimes it switches back and forth between rigid and textile. You can monitor your supply level, so you don't need those utilities to monitor your supply level. You can do head cleanings and everything from right here. So back out of that. But now that you got that, the next part would actually be bringing in the drivers. So when you install that, it also brought in the drivers into your profile folder. If you're not aware of where your profile folder is, you're going to go and you can go this way via computer, your Macintosh hard drive, the library, and then you want to find your ColorSync folder. Your ColorSync folder is where all your profiles should be. So that's profiles. We're going to double click that. And as you can see, I have my Epson profiles showing there. Now, here's the catch. If you're printing out of like Photoshop or any other programs, then you need that ICC profile to show up there because you want the software to manage the color and you don't want the printer to manage the color. So that's what this is. This is called an alias folder. This alias folder actually points back to my Adobe software. So this is my Adobe files. It's usually automatically here, the profiles. But anyways, you would just take and right click, copy, and then click on this folder, paste. So you paste item in there. That's how you get your profiles over. This one right here is for a different paper that I use. This one is for Jet Cold paper. This one is for the Jet Cold tacky adhesive paper. So you can end up with different profiles based off the different papers that you use. These two are the generic profiles. This is rigid. This is textile. These are the ones that come with the Epson F500. So once you got that done, if you have your software already open, you want to close your software, bring it back up, or sometimes you may have to restart your Mac, just depending. Mine's is fairly new, so I haven't had to restart, but I do have an older iMac from 2015 that I did have to restart when I put these on. So one of the other things that I do want to address about getting correct colors is making sure you're working in color profiles correctly because oftentimes you'll hear a lot of conflicting information. But if you're into sublimation, DTG, um, most digital processes, with the exception of white toner, which the RIP doesn't run on here anyways, but most digital printing processes, you want to be working in RGB. I hear some people make the CMYK argument, and because the printer is in CMYK, that would kind of be a fallacy because it's called double profiling at that point. You don't want to double profile and lock yourself in. I did want to show something that is very helpful to Mac users. If you don't know about this, this is one of the things that you should know. If you go to your Launchpad, you have utilities and different things like this. You have that ColorSync utility. Believe it or not, this can be like one of those things that help you out the most. Here, your profiles are going to show. So as you can see, when I actually set this up from just moving those profiles into those folders, my profiles show here. And this also show you the color gamut of those profiles. So it's actually one of the more useful things because you may hear people talk about Adobe 199A or sRGB or things like that. But if you look at this kind of tells you a lot. This is the color gamut. This is how wide this color gamut is for the Epson rigid profile. This is the Epson textile profile. This one here is for the text print paper, I believe, that I have. But you can see the color profiles. Now I'm going to show you Adobe 198. You see how wide this color profile is? That when you see it spread like that, that's the how wide that color profile will expand. So don't lock yourself in. For those that make the CMYK argument, watch how the CMYK gamut just shrink. This is one of the most narrow profiles that you're not going to be able to get the color output that you're expecting. That's lab. That's a generic RGB. So you have tools on your computer that you can actually use as a Mac user to help you understand color a little bit more. As far as this is concerned, um, you can type in a color like and understand what it'll do in one color profile versus the other. So let's, like red is 25500. This shows you a bit of how it translates. In sRGB, it's going to be regular 255. But if you're designing in the Adobe 1998, then it's going to be 219. That'll get you your strongest reds. Reds is one of the things I see people struggle with. Um, Technically, with sublimation, you're using shades of red. That is like a biggie. Um, and when I say shades of red, I could show you um, different versions of red. One of my favorites is cadmium red. It's less towards the orange spectrum. You see how you have red on two sides of the color spectrum. Over here, it's going to be more orangish. Over here, it mixes in more of the CMYK, well, more actually of the MYK, magenta, yellow, and black to create the red with the inks. So if I were to take this code, the 227034, and come over here, type it in, you see how that translates, and you can actually see the color shift versus this one right here under Adobe 198. Excuse me, Adobe 1998. It pretty much, these are the same colors, just two different ways to get there based off the color profile that you're using. Adobe 1998 is a wider color profile than sRGB. sRGB is kind of like a web code. So what you see on your screen, it'll get you there, but it'll be a slight shift. Now, if you did regular red is, like I said, I'm trying to think of what it is, color code wise. It's on this spectrum, but regular red is like 25500. There you go. So that's regular red. But as you can see, I came over here and orange is right there. So you can see the shift. This mixes more magenta, yellow, and black to give you that red, which takes away that orangish tone that it comes out looking like on paper. So it's quite the difference. But back to what we were saying about this. Now, setting up Photoshop, without even opening anything, you want to come in and set up your color settings. That is what warns you when you're bringing in something that does not match the color settings that you have, so you'll know whether or not you need to convert it to the color profile that you're in. That'll show you the shift in colors that may happen before you go to printing all of this stuff out and then screaming that it's not matching, or the next time you go to print it, you can't figure out what went wrong. So, color settings. This is what I keep mine on. I saved it actually, so it's always there as my basic. You have the defaults, but I set mine to Adobe 1998. I set it to preserve, 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 but ask me when I'm opening if it's a mismatch, or if the file that I'm working in doesn't even have a color profile attached to it. Most designers attach the color profile. I do use black point compensation. It controls the amount of color range, so to speak, like shadows and things like that. Um, as far as the other settings, I keep this on perceptual, because perceptual is one of the things, the way that your eye perceives things versus um, how it's perceived on screen. So when you're outputting, you want closer to what your eye will see it as, if that makes sense. But and then you can save it and give it a name and always go back to it if you have to reset anything. Now, the next part is actually assigning color profiles. I'm going to bring up a file, just one that I just recently downloaded. So nothing has been done to this. It hasn't been used or anything like that. I'm going to bring it up in Photoshop. Like, this is the warning I'm talking about. It's saying it's missing the color profile. It doesn't have any embedded ICC profile in it. So therefore, um, I would have to control what happens when I go to print. So what I do is leave it as is. Don't color manage. That's how I set it to begin with. Now, with that in mind, I'm looking at this, and this is why it's very important. One of the things that I do is bring up window, then info, so I can have this tab over here, because if you hover over things, it'll show you this HBCU is not pure black. Over here, it's telling me with the RGB on there, it's pretty much saying it's 222. If you can look over to this info tab to the right, that's telling me 222. So that's not pure black at all. What I'm going to do first is, since it didn't have a color profile attached to it, I'm going to hit convert to a profile. I'm going to bring it into my Adobe 1998. Since that's the artboard I'm working out of, that's how I'm going to output it. That's the color profile I'm going to attach. So I'm going to go ahead and convert that. Now, if I was going to print this to get my darkest blacks, I need that black to actually be my darkest black. So I'm going to change this. It's already set to 000. That's the darkest black. I'm going to make sure I have that up. I simply just click on them and change them. So, and if I hover back over this, if you're looking in that info tab, now you can see that RGB became 000. That's how I get my darkest blacks. But you would go through and change your design. This saves you time. This is telling me that this color here is 28117188 on the RGB code. You can sample this. So I sampled that, and now I got the color swatch. So now I got this code. For me, I go over here, and this is rgbcolorcode.com. I'm going to take that code and paste it in here, hit enter. It told me that that color is denim. If you're not sure, see that 28117188? It matches right here. That 1C, that's the same thing. That's just a shorter way of putting it in. It's called a hex code. But that lets me know that that color, that's what I should be expecting. Denim. But what if I wanted it to be a navy blue? Well, navy blue is slightly purple. Most people don't know it. It ranges more closer to the purple indigo spectrum. So you need to find specific blues. And this is what I love about this, because it kind of gives you an idea of how to expect that blue to come out. A lot of people don't realize that navy blue is not royal blue, it's not regular blue. That's another color that people struggle with. Royal blue is slightly deeper, as you can see. So if I wanted to change this to royal blue, that's what I'm going to do. I put the royal blue code in. I'm going to use my paint bucket. Now I got that royal blue instead of denim. Now, let's say I'm ready to print. I'm going to go up to File, Print, and as you can see, the document profile is Adobe 1998 because I converted it. That's how I'm making sure my profile stays RGB. I'm not switching between CMYK. I'm not using CMYK color codes. I'm working strictly in RGB and keeping everything in line. For the F570, since it's a dedicated sublimation printer, with this one, I use Photoshop Manager's colors. That way I can set the printer profile to match the Epson profile. The rendering intent is on perceptual. Black point compensation is checked. When I go to print, on Macs, you have this drop down here. Layout, blah, blah, color matching. Color matching, you're not going to do anything because you already told Photoshop to manage the colors. So you're taking the controls away from the printer on managing the colors. That's why it's also grayed out, because I told Photoshop, hey, you do the job. Don't let the printer do the job. The printer settings. This is where you want to make sure everything matches as far as the printer is concerned. The select target, No color adjustment. You want no color management. You don't want the printer to step in and try to take over what Photoshop is already doing on your behalf. The media type, you can set it or you can let the printer manage it. But I set it to textile to match what I told Photoshop I'm going to be using anyways. Another thing that I see people complain about is paper. I leave mine on normal cut, auto rotate, and save roll paper. The reason being that I do is that it'll use the least amount of length in the paper when you go to print. So it'll cut it off so you don't have all this extra paper. Now, of course, if you arrange your design in portrait mode where you're, well, in this case, it's going to be, um, yeah, portrait 24 inches wide, then you are going to have the extra paper on the sides, but you don't necessarily have to have it the length of your design. You can set it to cut off right at the bottom. And that's how you do it. So then you'll hit print and it'll head off to the printer. Mine's a set up wireless. I don't have anything wired to my computer as far as printers are concerned, except for a Sawgrass, which is actually wired to my router, but nothing else USB. But as you can see, if I was going to print this any other kind of way, this is how you maintain that whole color balance where you're not shifting in and out of colors. I hope this helps someone and I hope this makes sense in terms of color management. If not, drop questions below. I got you. Thank you for listening.